How are you doing? I heard that we have 65 students for this summer school. I think it's a great work from the committee. Can we give a big round of applause to the committee organizer? I heard also that so far, I think this is the third year or fourth year? The fourth year. It is the year with the largest number, which I congratulate once again the organizer. My name is Andi. You might see my name a bit unusual if you see this. I don't have here my name. Can you read my name? Thank you. Thank you for reading that correctly. Instead of I made Andi Arsana, because it was not you who made me, apparently. I'm a Balinese. I'm from Bali. This is now a geographical short lecture. The first I in my name is a sex indicator. I'm a male. Female would be an I, ni. So Made is the birth order. I'm the second child. So I'm a male and the second child in a family. So you will find millions of them in Bali. So that's why when Farhan say, please welcome Pak Imade, it doesn't really mean anything. Because Imade would be like a million of them. So Farhan, it's a joke. 3 days ago, I think, or 4 days ago, I was interviewed by a journalist from VOA. It was a WhatsApp interview. You know, these days they use WhatsApp even to interview for a very serious issue. And then the last question that she gave me is a very interesting question. The question goes like this: is I part of your name? Like, what? Is I part of your name? What do you mean? Is like the letter I part of your name? So it apparently, when it comes to a different culture, even name can generate serious problem, if you know what I mean. In Java, by the way, we have a lot of people whose name is only one word name. I think you're from Jogja or from Indonesia would understand what I mean, right? Our former president, the first president, name was Sukarno, and that's it. So even people like Sukarno wouldn't be able to create emails, because email at least require first name and last name, and the computer would. So now we talk about cultures, we talk about borders, we talk about different countries. When I ask you to imagine borders, can you mention one phrase or one word that come up first in your mind? War? Wall, okay. Line, barrier. Anything else? Limitation. Anything more serious than that? By the way, anybody from Germany here? Oh, you're from Germany. If I say border, what come up in your mind? Berlin Wall. There you go. Anything else? I always ask this question to my student whenever I teach border issue. And you know what? When I ask them to say one single word or phrase, these are usually what come up. Dispute, conflict, even war, territorial encroachment, pillar displacement, smuggling, poverty, and all other not so positive phrase. Even when I ask you, you say about limitation, remember? Wall, line, always something dividing. Now let me tell you a story about my own story when I was around your age, which was quite a long time ago. So even 20-something years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, we still imagining borders are like this. I guess that you're born after 90s, am I correct? Yep. So you're born after the fall of the Berlin Wall. So you don't even probably witness there was a wall between West Germany and East Germany, and it is one of the most obvious borders between countries back then. So 20 years after that, or 20 plus years after that, we still Imagine borders are just like this, Berlin Wall. In 1999, which was 10 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, I visited, can you guess? I wrote there, North Korea. Has anyone been to North Korea here? No? South Korea? Okay, you imagine K-pop, you imagine South Korea, not North Korea. My daughter, by the way, is 12 years old and she's a big fan of BTS. And she claimed herself as an army, which I didn't really understand. Now I understand it. See, you laugh. Does anybody know what army is? Not that army. Army is a fans of BTS. Oh my God, I don't understand those kind of. Ayah is daddy. I'm an army member. What? You're only 12 years old. No, that army. I went to North Korea, and I was taken to the border. I'm sorry for this. It doesn't really say anything about. It doesn't really show anything. Can you imagine from this Google Maps, by the way, what is in your imagination about the world? Can you tell something only from this map? What is your impression, by the way, to see the map? Only. No. You can see the North Korea and South Korea, right? Can you see the difference? What can you tell from the map only? Can you tell something? Like, what is your impression? You have no idea about North Korea in the map, right? Because it was white and blank. So, like the impression that I agree with you, we know nothing about North Korea, or nothing is in North Korea, which is apparently incorrect. Of course, there are a lot of things in North Korea. So map can actually give us an impression about the politics of the world. So meaning that at least Google does not know anything about North Korea. This is the borderline. I was taken to the borderline, and there are 3 or 4 blue houses over there, blue building, and the building is actually exactly on the borderline. That building. And this is the borderline between North Korea and South Korea. Okay? Within the building, I still remember, there are 3 or 2 tables, quite small tables. And exactly on the middle of the table, we found microphone. And the cable of the microphone, remember back then there is no wireless microphone yet. The cable of the microphone actually represents the border of the 2 countries. North Korea, South Korea. So only within the building we can cross the border. Okay? Outside of it, we see this. Soldiers. And this actually, if you see the line over there, next to the soldier, it's actually the border line. And we can also see this. So actually the same people, different uniform, they were divided because of the politics. So I witnessed actually the most heavily guarded borders in the world, like 24/7. Fast forward, in 2010, I was invited to Monaco. Is anyone from Monaco here or France? Okay, you're from France, right? Have you been to Monaco? Okay, yeah, but Monaco is a very small, only 2 kilometers country. Independent, I suppose, or you might not agree with me. Is it independent, right? It's like a country, basically. Yes. Well, it's complicated, I know. It's. I was asked to give a presentation, and then the first day they gave me pizza. Well, for us Indonesian, pizza is very, fancy, delicious. I liked it for the first day. The second day, they gave me pizza again. And the third day, pizza. Oh God, now my Asian stomach couldn't stand. So then I asked the organizer, where can I find rice here? or where can I find Asian food here? And then one of the ladies over there pointed that I was down there, and that was the closest Asian restaurant in the city. And then I checked with my Google Maps. It was only 7 minutes walk, which is very close, I think. And then I went there to have the best meal in the world, which is nasi or rice. I did not realize anything. There's nothing happened. It was all good until the next day I realized that it was actually in different country. So walking 7 minutes can bring you from one country to other country. That is what happens in Europe. You know exactly what I mean, right? So then I witnessed North Korea was like that before, and now I was in Europe. So we could not even realize, or couldn't even see where the borders is, let alone people who ask you visa or passport, nothing. I went actually also to the borders between Switzerland and France. There was a restaurant over there, a hotel restaurant, exactly on the borderline. I went there because now I'm a border person, so that's how I explore the world through the borders. Check into the restaurant and I asked the lady a cup of coffee, and I asked, where is the borderline? Because I cannot really see it. There is no soldiers, nothing. Sir, you are standing on the borderline at the moment. So the cashier machine was apparently on the borderline. And then after I order, she asked, this is a very good question. Sir, do you want to sit down in France or in Switzerland? Wow, this is amazing. So, borders, right? Now, if we go back, or we come back to a closer region here in ASEAN, now I talk about in ASEAN because ASEAN is a bit different compared to Europe. Europe is like one single land, continent, right? But ASEAN, on the other hand, is actually different countries connected or separated by ocean or waters. ASEAN would look like this, okay, in general. Now, ASEAN Economic Community, I think you guys would understand better than I do, but this is how I understand the ASEAN Economic Community. Now we are talking about the connection, even though we realize that there are borders, but we also know that there's a connection among countries in ASEAN. What does ASEAN Economic Community means to you? Can I ask my friend from Brunei Darussalam who loves Geodetic? Do you have any idea? Like, what is your opinion about maybe in like 1 or 2 sentences, if I may ask? Do you want to say anything about ASEAN Economic Community? If you don't want, I'm not forcing you, so take it easy. No, you good? Yep. ASEAN, right? We have the ASEAN Economic Community, meaning that we have a borderless ASEAN. The economy will be integrated somehow. What do you think about that? Like, what is your opinion about that? Thank you so much. That's a very good answer. It's easy for countries to trade, right? Thank you. That's a good answer. Now, because I'm a geospatial person, I always map everything. There will be somebody from the Philippines working in Singapore, right? And having a project, and he or she would call somebody in Bali to offer the project. The project is actually in a village in Vietnam. That is what ASEAN Economic Community is all about. And if the gentleman or ladies in Bali agrees to do so, to do the project, he or she has to form a group or a team that consists of people from Thailand and Malaysia, right? That is what ASEAN Economic Community is all about. It will look like this. Correct? So now we actually face already this kind of situation. Somebody from Philippines working in Singapore will call you in Jogja, for example, to offer a project in Vietnam, and let's say 1 week from now, they will need to see you in a village in Vietnam. and you have to bring your friends from Thailand and Malaysia, like 10 of them. That is what ASEAN Economic Community is all about, and it is happening now already since 15. So we have the connection, we have the agreement to actually ignore somehow the borders, but once again, the geographical situation is different compared to in Europe. So I cannot really walk 7 minutes and then bring me to other country in this kind of situation, right? So the neighborhood in ASEAN will look like this. My Indonesian friend would understand what I mean. Okay, this is actually representing the conflict between Indonesia and Malaysia about borders. So I would like to inform you, my non-Indonesian Malaysian friend. To the left is actually an iconic figure, if I may say, cartoon from Indonesia, and to the right, the two very naughty boys from Malaysia. Do I have our friends from Malaysia here? Before I offend you too much? No, okay. That's okay. No, I will not offend. So that's this one. Anybody from Thailand here? You're from Thailand. You know what this picture is all about, right? Do you know this temple? No, it is not Angkor Wat. Okay, anyone from Cambodia? Okay, do you have any issue of borders with Cambodia? Yes, thank you. It finished long ago. Well, I'm not trying to modify the history, but the issue between Cambodia and Thailand is still there about this Preh temple in the borders. So basically, the temple belongs to Cambodia, but then the area around that is actually for Thailand, and things like that. So there is actually an issue still, even in 2016, 2017, issue of borders within our neighborhood in Thailand. In ASEAN. Does anybody understand what it means? So whenever we have problems with Malaysia, we usually use this phrase, which means curse Malaysia or something like that. It was actually coined by our first president back in 1960s, Sukarno, because he did not understand to a policy coined by the British about the role of Malaysia in the region. So even until now, we are very good neighbors. We need each other, but still, whenever we have problems with borders, we usually come up with this kind of statement, which is actually quite harsh. Not so nice for neighbors to say, but we still use this kind of word even until now. Even though some of them would add this, probably, maybe you like this better. It doesn't matter how much we hate Malaysia, but we love their singer, especially Siti Nurhaliza. Suka Siti Nurhaliza kan? Do you know her? You know her, right? Okay. Anyway, so this is actually the neighborhood in ASEAN, the dynamics of interaction in ASEAN. Now, ASEAN and China. Anybody from China here in the room? You're from China. Sorry, I will not offend you. So, can we just skip this slide? This is a scientific kind of a discussion. I hope you would understand what I mean. So, basically, in an issue like South China Sea, there is a very we are not going to talk about that, complicated issue about that. And this is how China versus ASEAN looks like in the cartoonist interpretation. China, big fish. ASEAN are actually small fish, but 10 of them, and they're trying hard to look big, to face China. So that's why they actually use mask over there. But the problem is not everybody in ASEAN would support the mask. We understand also that 10 countries in ASEAN, not every single countries are as equally strong. And especially I understand a number of ASEAN members are quite dependent upon China in terms of economy. And then this actually makes the situation more complex. So for the first time in 2012, I think, ASEAN failed to have a joint communique, specifically because they did not manage to agree upon the statement or opinion about South China Sea when it comes to facing China. One of the reasons is the economy, the independence of the dependence of economy of those numbers of ASEAN members. So this is what ASEAN and China would look like if I need to picture it in one single slide. Now, we understand already that the ocean is important, not only to connect countries, but also for the trading, right, for the trade. Now, the question is, where's the limit of our borders, of our ocean? That is what we are going to talk about now. I hope that my other friends from any other countries other than Indonesia not offended with that, but Indonesia is apparently the largest country in terms of number of population. That's why Indonesia is the capital of ASEAN, which is literally, Jakarta is actually the capital city of ASEAN. Indonesia looked like this when it was independent. In 2000, when it got independence in 1945. So this is the land area, and at that time, based on the law at that time, a country can only have 3 nautical miles of ocean. Okay, 3 nautical miles only. So it looked like this. You get my point, right? This is the land area, and the ocean looked like this only. Very thin belt from each island. Okay? So can you imagine what happens? So meaning that between, for example, there will be space of ocean over there that is not belong to Indonesia. If we zoom this one, for example, so the green area is actually the international waters, right? The blue space over there belongs to Indonesia. So it means that when Indonesians want to go from one island to other island, they have to go through international waters, which means it belongs to everybody. It can be used for by everybody, basically, which means it also brings threat to Indonesia. And that's why Indonesia then, for the first time in history, to claim, okay, we have to do something about it, and then let us claim all the waters in between Indonesian islands. And then the claim is like that, back in 1957. So to claim the water between the island to be part of Indonesian territory or jurisdiction. And then the 12 nautical miles or the Territorial Sea claim from the belt. So not from each island anymore, but from the entire belt. So this is what Indonesia wanted. Do you think that the world agrees with it straight away? Of course not, especially Malaysia. No, Malaysia gave us quite a hard time and a challenge. We understood somehow that if we claim the entire, it means Indonesia now becomes very large, and everything in between the islands now belong to Indonesia, and all the resources also now for Indonesia, right? Which is probably sounds a little bit not fair to other country. We then tried to convince the international community about that, about the proposal, and we failed in 1958, we failed in 1960s, and then but we did not give up. We fought hard, and then we managed to convince the international community until 1982, when they agreed on the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. Probably some of you would have heard about it. 1982. So if you remember in 1957, this is what Indonesia asked for. And after the establishment of the convention, this is what Indonesia was entitled to. See the difference? What Indonesia asked for, Indonesia entitled to. So even more than what Indonesia asked for. the power of diplomacy. Now we have the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea that makes this claim legal. By the way, is there anyone from the Philippines here? No? Anyone from an archipelagic state? Archipelago? Like in the Pacific? Okay then, I can say anything about it then. No. So now understanding so if you, I'm not really sure in your own country, but at least in Indonesia, we have been taught about how a country can have or is entitled to ocean space. Like Territorial Sea for 12 nautical miles. I think, did you also learn about that in your country, right? Exclusive economic zone? No. Okay. That's okay. So this is the baseline. Baseline is the meeting point between the water and the land. Beyond that, it's 12 nautical miles of territorial sea, so it is your entitlement. And then beyond that is exclusive economic zone and continental shelf. So it means, in a simple language, a country is entitled to a very large maritime area based on the Law of the Sea Convention. I believe that, so you from France, right? France. France is also a member to the Law of the Sea Convention. Germany, I believe also, because you have you have borders with what country? Denmark and the Netherlands, right, in the North Sea. Yeah. So you actually set a very good example back in 1969, how to settle borders between countries, with the 3 countries in the North Sea. So very large maritime area. Now, how to do that? Because I'm a technical person, I'll inform you how to claim the area. So before we use the ocean for trade, we have to make sure the limit of our entitlement, right? So if we talk about the 12 nautical miles, 200 nautical miles, and this is what it looks like when it comes to the delineation. So this is how we we establish the outer limits of the ocean. I hope this animation explains quite well. Okay, so that is actually the outer limits. Let's say if the radius of the line is 12 nautical miles, it means this is actually the outer limits of territorial sea, right? If the radius is 200 nautical miles, so it means that it is the outer limits of EEZ, or exclusive economic zone, and so on and so forth. So this is the territorial sea, okay? Not like this, because some people would misunderstand that. They think that there's like the duplication of the line and then pull like 12 nautical miles seaward. Not like that. How about if we have this kind of curly coastal line? What should we do? If you have this kind of coastline, you can have what we call a straight baseline, and then from the baseline we can measure the 12, the 200, and so on and so forth. I hope this explains. Okay? So now this is the blue one is the territorial sea, and then the red or pink space is now called internal waters. So this is quite important. So if you talk about port, for example, because in trading we understand where port is actually within the red or the pink area. So the law that is applicable to the blue area and red or pink area are different. So that is why we need to understand that. So we talk about trade, talk about shipping and everything, all the business take place in the red zone or pink zone, not in the blue zone. Okay? And now you believe that I'm a technical person, right? Like a very graphics kind of person. Now, Indonesia, as I said earlier, consists of a lot of islands. What happens to Indonesia? Indonesia is entitled to what they call the baseline, archipelagic baseline. So Indonesia can first enclose the entire archipelago. So all the waters within the enclosure actually belong to Indonesia. And then it can claim out of that is territorial sea, contiguous zone, EEZ, and continental shelf. So it means that now this is what a country like Indonesia can claim based on the law of the sea convention. So very large. So the water within or between islands and also outside of the island, right? Now the question is it possible for Indonesia to do this? Like to claim all the entitlement based on the law of the sea convention? The answer is, okay, let's say. So if I illustrate that in a very simple illustration, so if there is a country like that, very small, in the ocean, so based on the law of the sea convention, it is entitled to a very, very, very large maritime area, like this large. So if you can find a country very small in the ocean and has no neighbors, so it is entitled to a very large maritime area. So imagine a country like 1 kilometers square kilometers, smaller than Monaco. In the ocean alone, it can claim 1 million times of its land size. So that is why this law is very important to countries like Indonesia or whatever countries in the ocean, because it will enable the country to claim a very large maritime area where they can have a lot of resources, right? The question is it possible? Because the world look like this. A lot of countries. How many countries do we have in the world? Do you have a number? 200. 200 something? Okay, what is the number of UN member? Do you have any guess? 100? 195, very, very close. I think it's correct. 193, I think. Okay, very, very close. So let's say 200. 200 countries close to each other, and every country would be entitled to the same space, right? And you know, the shape of the world like this, we know whom to blame. If you don't think this is funny, probably you don't really watch too much movies. So you learn too much, probably. So now allow me to illustrate that. If the world looked like this, every country would be entitled to 12 nautical miles of territorial sea, right? And then if they claim territorial sea, for example, the state C and D, if you see that, they have no problem, okay? But when they claim exclusive economic zone, which is 200 nautical miles, they start to have problems, right? Between state C and D, for example, there will be overlapping entitlement, where borders now needed delimitation. That is what we call maritime boundary delimitation. And it is actually governed by the law of the sea convention or UNCLOS. I don't want to talk about the articles and everything, but at least you understand now, okay, that is how it works, and it is governed actually by a certain law, right? And so on and so forth. Okay, now I stop this here. So every country would claim maritime space based on the law of the sea convention, and it generates complication already, right? So even everybody is compliant to the law, every country is compliant to the law, it's already very complex. Now what happens when there is 1, 2, 3 country who make the claim not based on the law of the sea convention? That will bring another like a higher level of complexity. Okay. This is Indonesia now. When we apply this, what we already learned to Indonesia, it will look like this. Okay. So to the west of Sumatra, I regret I cannot really point out here. This one, for example, this line. This is the 200 nautical miles from Indonesia, right? Indonesia can claim the full 200. Why? Because there's no other countries over there. So Indonesia does not need to share any border lines with any other countries. But in here, it's a different story. Indonesia would love to claim 200 nautical miles, but Australia is also entitled to the same. So it means they have to draw the border line. So the red line is actually an agreed border line already with neighbors. And so on and so forth. Okay, now can you do you have somebody from Australia here? No, right? Do you know, does anybody know what this is? What? Christmas Island. Oh, wow, you're from Christmas Island? No. You're from Germany, but you know Christmas Island. Thank you. You're a geographer, no? Are you? Oh, you're passionate about geography, okay. This is a Christmas Island that belongs to Australia. That is why we need to have a border over here, right? So people might usually ask me, hey, really? That small island is very close to Java or to Indonesia and very far away from Australia, but it belongs to Australia. So this is one important principle that we would understand in the context of the law of the sea or international law, that distance does not contribute to the ownership. So it doesn't matter how close it is, it might not be yours. So it can be like very far from Australia, but it belongs to Australia. Why? Because back in the 1700 something, the British came and claimed the Christmas Island as part of the territory. So it means now it is part of Australia. While on the other hand, the Dutch, as the predecessor of Indonesia, did not go there and claim. So it means now the law that we believe now is called uti possidetis juris, which means the territory that we have nowadays actually inherited from the colonials. So what we have now in Indonesia is actually part of the Dutch power back in 14, 15, 1600, 1700. Okay? So Indonesia looks like this now. The problem is we also still have maritime boundary issues in ASEAN. If we see this from the Indonesian perspective, because ASEAN is basically around Indonesia, we still have problems over here. Quite a number of them. Okay? Do we have anyone from India here? No? Okay. We have borders with India. I'll just make this quick. Now we also have with Malaysia in the Strait of Malacca. Okay, the Strait of Malacca is very important for us. Why? Because 50% trade of the world, or even more, was through the Strait of Malacca. So the safety in the Strait of Malacca is very important for not only for Indonesia and Malaysia and Singapore, but for the world. Now Indonesia already established the borders with Malaysia back in 1969. However, this line was actually to divide only the seabed, the dasar laut, the seabed only, not the water. Okay? Why the seabed only? Because it was established in 1969 when the Law of the Sea Convention was not there yet. The current Law of the Sea Convention was not there. If you still remember, the Law of the Sea Convention was established in 1982. So it means that before 1982, they divided only the seabed, not the water. Okay? Now, after the new Law of the Sea Convention ratified by Indonesia and Malaysia, they have to divide now the water. And this is what Indonesia wants, to be the division of the water, which is quite interesting. I hope you understand this situation. So it means that Indonesia wants a different line to divide the water compared to the line dividing the seabed, right? Do you think Malaysia would agree? What do you think Malaysia would want? Indonesia, yes, exactly, you're right. Indonesia wants the same line, Malaysia wants the same line dividing the seabed and the water column. I hope you understand what I mean. So it means now, in this area, Indonesia wants to have it, Malaysia also wants to have it, right? So this is Malaysia, this is Indonesia. Now it creates an issue, like the negotiation has been ongoing for years and years. We have met the Malaysian delegation for maybe 30 times, but we haven't managed to establish that. Now if we show, if I show you in the three-dimensional perspective, this is what happened. In 1969, Indonesia and Malaysia already divided, but only the seabed. Can you see that? the seabed only. Now for the water column, this is what Indonesia wants. Got it, right? Now a different space over there. But this is what Malaysia wants. Okay, the same line dividing the seabed and the water, which creates the space over there that is claimed by both Malaysia and Indonesia. Overlapping area. What does it mean? It means whenever Malaysian fishermen fish over there, our Indonesian patrolling officer would capture them, catch them, and vice versa. Right? Because each country would want to have that. And what happens if the two, this will be interesting. If you have the two patrolling officers to meet over there in the overlapping area. I think Indonesian officer would say this: you are entering our water, which is cut and paste by the Malaysian side. You are the one entering our water. So this is exactly what happens from time to time in the Indonesian water, especially in the Strait of Malacca. So if you see news or TV or newspapers or in the online portal to say that there is a border crossing in the Strait of Malacca, it is certainly an incorrect or inaccurate news. Why? There will be no border crossing because even there's no border yet over there, right? So the border is actually the claim by Indonesia and by Malaysia only. Okay, now the question is, people ask me, is it true, is it correct that Indonesia to claim the line dividing the water different from the line dividing the seabed? It is not actually unprecedented. So this is what already happened between Indonesia and Australia. Let me show you this. This is the borderline to divide the seabed between Indonesia and Australia in 1970s. And then Indonesia, Australia managed to agree on the borderline dividing the water column, which is different from the line dividing the seabed. Okay? It is not a proposal anymore, it is already agreed by the two countries. Which means now, in that space, in that particular space, the seabed belongs to Australia, but the water column belongs to Indonesia. Can you imagine the complexity? So the down under there is for Australia, but the water is for Indonesia. What does it mean? It means this. Right? So the fish, if they have passport, it will be Indonesian passport. And the oil and gas is certainly for Australia in the area. But what you might not understand or might not know yet is the sea cucumber is actually for Australia. So can you imagine if Indonesian fishermen, because what they understand is they can fish over there, right? If they accidentally catch sea cucumber, it is actually a violation to the international law. Can you imagine our fishermen haven't even attended any of my classes, so they might be captured. So if you heard like Indonesian fishermen were captured, if the Indonesian fishing boat were seized by the Australian patrolling officers, probably it's not because they crossed the border, but because they catch the wrong species, basically. So can you imagine if Indonesia would propose this kind of arrangement with Malaysia, with any other countries, the complexity of the resource management will be very high, right? South China Sea, should I stop here or can I say something about this? My friends from China? No, okay, consider this as a scientific exercise. So this is not representing any view of any government or any institution that I belong to. This is purely scientific. Okay, can I ask something? Have you heard about the South China Sea issue? What do you heard about it? If you don't mind telling me, like in one or two sentences.
we lectured with Dr. Poppy yesterday, and she told us.
Oh, okay. Oh, Poppy. Ibu Poppy told you already. All right. Anybody heard beyond that, beyond the lecture that you had? Can I ask your opinion, my Chinese friend? Sorry, because I just don't know your name. Your name is? Xiao. Not Xiaomi, eh? No? Oh, sorry. Do you want to say anything about it? You don't have to. Okay. Thank you. This is very good. You don't focus on this kind of issue, right? Because when you're in Indonesia or in the Philippines, we think that 1 billion people in China always thinks about South China Sea, which is apparently incorrect. Eh? We always think that we are facing a very big country with 1 billion people, and then everybody think about South China Sea. Apparently, it's incorrect. So, okay, South China Sea. Imagine the world. We have a space over there that is surrounded by countries, right? In a general or in a natural geographical setting, we usually have land surrounded by waters, correct? Now we have waters surrounded by land. Do you see that? So even from this kind of setting, we understand already that this can be very complicated. Why? Because, for example, Vietnam is entitled to ocean space to the right or to the east. China is entitled to the ocean space to the south or to the down. Philippines to the west. Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia to the north, and so on and so forth. So it actually converges into one point, which means that the probability for the dispute is very high. Now, if I make it very quick, after everybody claims this ocean space, now the South China Sea looks like, so even when every country claims maritime space in accordance with Law of the Sea Convention, the situation is already very complex. Okay? Without claims, when I map all the claims, it looks like this. Very, very complex, right? Okay? Now, let alone, even though every country is in compliance with the Law of the Sea Convention, the situation is already very complex. Now, what happens if a country or two or three make a claim over there which is not based on the Law of the Sea Convention? In this case, China has done that, which I understand somehow because it is based on a certain principles. But the issue is that China, in this case, claimed almost the entire of that South China Sea. So it looks like this. This is Indonesia and Malaysia, Indonesia and Vietnam, all good. This is the 200. We are talking about the theory, remember, the 12 and 200. 200 also from this side, and 200 from Indonesia. So all of this is actually based on the Law of the Sea Convention. It already looks very messy, right? All the overlapping areas and everything. Now, if we put that and overlay with what the claim of China, it looks like this. So the China will have the claim over there to claim basically almost the entire of the South China Sea. Not based on the distance of 12 nautical miles or 24 or 200, but based on historic claim, which we understand somehow. Unfortunately, the historic claim is not recognized by the Law of the Sea Convention, which China is also a party to. This is the official map of China to be deposited to the United Nations. You see that claim over there. And if you see this, the issue in ASEAN actually, so it affects actually the situation in ASEAN, because if China has this kind of claim like this, it will affect certainly Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, right? and Indonesia somehow. So then, in 2013, the Philippines brought the case to the tribunal. And then the decision was that, it's quite interesting actually, that the tribunal decided China does not have the right in those space, which is very interesting. Now, what it means? That's first decision. Second decision is that if you see the islands over here in the South China Sea, the island, small island rock, LTE, and so on and so forth, it is actually considered as rock. It means that it is entitled only to the 12 nautical miles of territorial sea, no more than 12 nautical miles. Okay? If you see that, this now, let me explain you about this. So the feature in the ocean, like this, we know that the ocean does not stay still, right? The surface. It can go down, it can also go up, right? So anything that always appear, even during the high tide, it is called island or rock. So if the feature is not always above the surface, it is not an island. So this is called an island, this is called low tide elevation. So if there's a feature that submerged during the high tide but only emerged during the low tide, it is called low tide elevation, not an island. Why do we need to bother? Why do we need to care about this? Because according to the law, it says this. Okay, this is land, right? This is ocean, and based on what we learned already, ocean 12 nautical miles is called territorial sea, measured from the land. But now the question is, if there are 4 low tide elevation over there, does it generate more ocean? That's the question. The answer is yes for 1 and 2 and 3, but not for the 4. Why 1 and 2? Because they lie within the territorial sea. So it will generate this. And number 3, even though it is outside the territorial sea, but it has a lighthouse over there. Okay, so now for a country like Indonesia or any other country with small island or small features, this law is very important, because when they have a small features, like in the ocean, they can claim more ocean measured from that features. Okay? Now, the decision in the South China Sea, once again, we go back to that, is all those small features over there is entitled only 12 nautical miles. It looks like that. So no more than 12 nautical miles, which means there will be no overlapping with Indonesia. That is from the Indonesian perspective, no overlapping claim. I'll just make it quick. And the group of island cannot form the baseline like what Indonesia did, like that. It cannot do that. Okay, that's another decision. The other decision is that even large features over there cannot claim more than 200. For example, we have this island over there, Itu Aba. Itu Aba is in the South China Sea. Even Itu Aba is considered only a rock, which means that it cannot claim more than 12 nautical miles of territorial sea. So Itu Aba looks like a well-established island, right? It has a runway over there. It also has this solar panel installation, but still I don't know why the court decided that it is not an island. It is merely a rock. So it cannot claim more than 12 nautical miles of territorial sea, which is very interesting. We can discuss about this. The other decision is that the reclamation that is done by whoever, China included in it and other countries, reclamation to the island is wrong. Not is wrong. It is the harm to the environment, at least. So meaning it has to be stopped. So a lot of very surprising things happening after the decision. Now, what is Indonesia's reaction? Now, Indonesia's reaction is like this. Before, Indonesia think that there is an overlapping area between China and Indonesia, right? Now because of the decision, it's no longer true, it looks like this. So no overlapping claim. Not only that Indonesia now think that there's no claim, but Indonesia also rename the space over there Laut Natuna Utara, or the North Natuna Sea. So if you remember before, it was called the South China Sea. Now Indonesia gave a name. Actually on the 14th of July 2017, a few days ago, we issued a new map that actually shook the world, because Indonesia now claim this area is named the North Natuna Sea, or South Laut Natuna Utara. So the naming of the area becomes a diplomatic tools for Indonesia to actually to assert their claim in certain area in the ocean. We in my area, we understand that actually the naming of areas in the world, especially the maritime area, is actually governed by one of the documents called S23. You don't have to remember this. So it means that what I'm trying to say is that the world would understand that every space or every maritime space in the world already has their name, and it has been agreed by the entire world. Now Indonesia come up with an idea to rename that based on the Indonesian interest, and that actually brings a lot of attention, also protests, including from our friends from China. So this is the issue that we have now in the region, especially in ASEAN. So how the ocean issue, borders issue actually bring tension, or it can bring tension, while on the other hand, we can actually somehow utilize the border issue as a positive contributing factors to the economy. If you still remember my visit to Switzerland and France, they have a cafe or they have a restaurant over there that they actually capitalize the border issue into economic gain. That is something that we haven't been able to do in ASEAN in the region. We haven't done so. So this is, once again, I would like to remember that the importance of ocean to borderless ASEAN. We need to understand the border issues in ASEAN, and we need to understand the conflict that we are facing now. Why? Because that eventually will affect the trade, will affect the economic activities within ASEAN. So with that, I would like to end this session, and then we'd like to have a Q&A. Thank you, terima kasih. Any question? Anything, basically? Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lydia from Atmajaya Yogyakarta University. I would like to ask you about the scene of the Malaysia and Indonesia in the Malacca Strait, while the fishermen from Malaysia and Indonesia come, and then how if the third parties come, like for example it is the ship from Brunei through that unfinished claim area, what would happen? And then I will also ask you that who is the owner of the sea that no one's claimed? Like the world has a large amount of sea, and if the sea isn't claimed by anyone, who is the owner? Thank you.
First, anybody is allowed to pass through any part of the ocean. So we have to understand this. Ocean is not like your house, basically. There is no word as a trespass, if you know what I mean, right? Remember? So it is not like a land area. Ocean is for everybody, but you know that this belongs to you, but it doesn't mean that you can prevent people from passing through. Okay? So in the Strait of Malacca, anybody can go there, but we have to understand that in the space, the space belongs to only Malaysia and Indonesia, meaning that only Malaysia and Indonesia can utilize the resources over there. But in terms of passing through, no problem at all. Okay, meaning that, so it also applies to any area disputed or undisputed. Hope you understand that. Second, yeah, you're correct about the space, ocean space of the world. There are a lot of space that is not actually part of the entitlement of any countries, right? For the water column, for the water, it belongs to everybody. It's called high seas. High seas means laut bebas, free seas. Anybody can go there and fish. So it means that if you have the technology to go there and fish there. However, for the seabed, it is a different story. The seabed is part of the heritage of mankind, they call it, which means that if anybody wants to go there to mine the oil and gas, they can do that, but it has to be in consultation with an international body called ISA, International Seabed Authority. So based on the Law of the Sea Convention, there is a body called International Seabed Authority who actually is taking care of the seabed, which means that if you have a very good company and you have a sophisticated equipment, you can go there and then dig the oil, but with permission of the ISA, and then a certain percentage of your revenue has to be given to ISA to be distributed to every country in the world, including the landlocked state. Do you understand if I say landlocked state? Meaning the state with no ocean. Can you name one or two? Switzerland, Laos. Yeah, at least. So even a country like Laos, how do I pronounce Laos? Laos or Lao? Laos? Are you sure about that? Anybody from Laos here? Okay, so we can say anything. Laos, but I understand Lao actually refers to the people, right? I think, but the country is Laos. Anyway. Sorry, does anybody understand there is a country called Kiribati here? The spelling is Kiribati, but we have to pronounce Kiribati, which I don't understand why. Anyway, Laos, even a country like Laos who does not have ocean next to it, it is entitled to the resources or revenue out of the ocean managed by the International Seabed Authority. All good? Next question, please.
I'm Karisma from Universitas Gadjah, Mada. With all the disputes that we are still having between Asian countries right now, do you think is it too early to have Asian economic communities?
Wow, this is deep, huh? It sounds like a dissertation examination. We always believe in not only in ASEAN but also in the world. We call it transboundary resources because fish does not recognize fence, right? Fish do not recognize borders, which means it doesn't matter you have it or not. I mean, you have the borders or not, the resources actually do not really recognize it. So it means that even without borders, we can collaborate. That is a positive comment from me, meaning that even without established or 100% established borders in ASEAN, it doesn't mean we cannot really start the collaboration in terms of economy. As long as we can manage it. There is a provision in the Law of the Sea Convention to say that in a plain language, if two countries fail to establish a permanent borders, they can make a provisional agreement in such a way to utilize resources. Which means that if you fail to, like country A and country B fail to establish a border, they can establish a space over there. So they can do the joint cooperation to explore and exploit the area jointly, and then they share the revenue. So there have been a lot of examples about that, and in ASEAN we can certainly do that. Thailand actually has that in the Gulf of Thailand. So I don't think it is too early, but I agree with you somehow that will be not so positive contributing factors to the unity. Next. Nisma. Yes, Nisma.
I'm from Copenhagen Business School, and my question is, what do you think about the military base that China is already building in the South China Sea, which they have not claimed yet? I mean, they don't have it. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I did my PhD in Law of the Sea, so let me comment on purely on the legal perspective. Not until there is a decision of ownership or sovereignty, you can actually do something on land. That is the principles. Meaning in this case is that I'm not only talking about China or whatever countries in the South China Sea issue. If you haven't secured an indisputable ownership or sovereignty over land, so you can't do anything about it. That's the theory. So meaning that, in my opinion, whoever built the military base, reclamation, whatever, in the South China Sea features or land or rock, that is actually not a positive contribution to the positive development of the issue. So it will not contribute positively to the resolution of the issue. That's my opinion. So if I were China or whoever countries, my suggestion would be restrain, stop now. Let us talk about the ownership, about the sovereignty first, and then after that we can collaborate or we can do the next step.
Thank you. My name is Bima from UPN Veteran Jakarta.
Yes.
My question might be outside the ASEAN. What do you think and what is your opinion about the issue in the North Pole? Because I heard an issue that some countries claim the North Pole. Thank you.
Bima, thank you. Bima, right? North Pole. Well, if you still remember my first slide, not that like one of the first slides, a country actually entitled to more than 200 nautical miles. If you are aware of that, right? So 12 nautical miles of territorial sea, 200 nautical miles of EEZ, and more than 200 is called continental shelf, which is the seabed. So now imagine the pole. How many countries are within the North Pole? 5, I think, yeah? Russia is certainly there. So meaning that if all countries over there claim more than 200, everything, like all the claim will converge into the North Pole, correct? So claiming the North Pole is not a claim, actually. They are entitled to have that based on the law of the Sea Convention. So meaning that, like one day when the arrangement has been settled, 1 or 2 or 3 countries will actually own the North Pole. Not because they want it or not because they are bad, but because the law allows them to do so. Okay, so what, I think you talk about Russia probably. What Russia did actually to make a claim based on the law of the Sea Convention that happens to extend to the North Pole. And what Russia and all other countries actually have been doing is actually to submit that claim to the United Nations, and then the United Nations will judge. Even Indonesia has already done that. There is a small chunk in, if I may, so if you see this, for example, can you see the little red? Can I use this? Can you see this moving? Yeah, right? The little red over here, can you see that? So it is actually a seabed that is beyond 200 nautical miles. Okay, even Indonesia claimed that Indonesia already submitted to the United Nations, and the United Nations already approved that. So now that is what actually Russia and all other polar countries are doing. They claim it based on the scientific proof. They submit it to the United Nations, and the United Nations will do the consideration, and then eventually they will come up with decision whether yes or no. So claiming pole in this case is actually legal. I'm not really sure that the Sinterklaas will be with Russia or with America. I don't know.
You said before that every countries, it's not possible for every country to claim their territorial sea, right? Then why UNCLOS have to establish a law that can cause many territorial disputes between countries? Thank you.
Wow, that is a very good question. Well, if you follow me, let me explain in a plain language. The entitlement for a country is to have 12 nautical miles. Okay? That's your entitlement. The problem is that the distance between countries can be less than 24. Correct? So if the distance between countries is less than 24 nautical miles, it means that you cannot really have full 12 and your neighbor cannot have full 12. You got it, right? So it means that entitlement is there when it is possible, which actually, the law actually want to limit your entitlement. For example, if Indonesia is not limited by the law with regards to entitlement, Indonesia would like to claim all of this space, right? Correct? So the law is actually to limit the claim that you can, to prevent excessive claim. So what I was trying to say is that, for example, in here, Indonesia can claim 12 nautical miles easily and 200 nautical miles easily, but in this space, Indonesia cannot claim the full 200, right? So that's what I mean. So Law of the Sea Convention actually would like to promote peace, because otherwise everybody will just try to claim as much as they want. Can you imagine a country like the United States with sophisticated technology, Russia, China, if they are not limited by the law, they just can, or they just want to have like every space of the ocean. That is actually the principles. So entitlement, and then if then just like this. How many brothers and sisters do you have? 3. So you 4 of you? 4 of you. Okay. If your parents say this to you, everybody will have, let's say, 100,000 rupiah every day, right? Well, if you cannot comprehend the thousand, it is actually not too much, right? Okay, because if you think about euro, oh my God, 100,000 every day. So 1,000 every day. So it means that your father has to have 400,000 every day, right? So if your father have 400,000 every day, no problem at all. But when your father does not have the 400 one single day, that is when the regulation, when what I said earlier happened. So not every child would be able to claim or to be entitled always to the full entitlement. And then where the division will take place.
My name is Moe. I'm from Sophia University, Japan.
Okay.
In Japan, there are so many islands there, and so for protecting EEZ, we are doing some maybe island like rocks that you mentioned before.
Yes.
We are protecting like
Sea.
by using exactly, by using concrete.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you that I think in Indonesia there's some like 30,000 islands. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So if you are doing something for little islands.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the protection, you mean, right?
Protection, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Moe was talking about an island in Japan called Okinotorishima Island. One of them is Okinotorishima. So basically, there's a small island quite far away from the main islands, which means that if Japan managed to convince the international community that the island is actually entitled to 200 nautical miles of EEZ, for example, or even seabed, it means Japan can claim a very large maritime area. I hope you understand what I mean. So, just like this, for example. Imagine this small island, which is Christmas Island, now belongs to Indonesia. Okay? So if this belongs to Indonesia, so it means this water will be for Indonesia, right? So Japan has a small island called Okinotorishima, one of them. The problem is it is very vulnerable because it is very small. What Japan has been doing recently is to protect the island using the concretes to protect the island. Now the question is that it is actually, to us it is not an island even. It is a rock. Very small, very fragile. But Japan has been doing a lot to convince us, the international community, that this is actually an island, so it means it is entitled to 12, 200, and even more than 200 of ocean space. So that is actually what happening now. Indonesia, on the other hand, we have, okay, allow me to correct you, 17,508 islands. So Indonesia is the largest archipelagic country in the world in terms of number of islands, but not 30,000. So, but thank you very much. You give us a lot more. Well, when you ask Indonesian people how many islands do you have, even not everybody would come up with the same answer. Some will say, I think it's around 17,000. Some other would say, I think it's around 13,000. See, even the differences is already 4,000. Can you imagine? There's no other country would be saying that, right? How many islands do we have? 13,000 atau 17,000 ya? Like 13,000 or 17,000? Even the difference of the data is already 4,000. Indonesia, to my understanding, has not done any protection like that. Because what I understand about Okinawa Hiroshima is it is a small rock, basically. So it is surrounded by 360 degrees of protection. So in order to protect this island, because if the island submerge or what is it called? With abrasion from the ocean, it means they cannot anymore claim the ocean, right? Because basically from the land they can claim the ocean. So what Japan has been doing is actually to protect the land from the environmental degradation. So legally they can keep claiming the ocean out of that. Indonesia has not been doing that kind of thing. What we do is actually probably because we have too many islands. Okay, if we lost 2 or 3, I think we still have 17,000.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Hafiz. My question, I'm interested about the fact that you say that the AEC should consider ocean as a tool for economic development as opposed to source of disputes. And I think that one of the ways that we can cooperate is through supply chain logistics. And what has AEC do, or is there any initiatives from Asian member countries for such cooperation to happen? And how do you think Asian member countries should move forward, considering that we are divided by the oceans and still have so many border disputes? Thank you.
Thank you, Hafid. Very good question. At least from the Indonesian perspective, we certainly can see a positive development about the management of the ocean. The Jokowi administration now proposed an agenda called Global Maritime Fulcrum, or Poros Maritim Dunia. Sea toll is one of them. Basically to connect one points and other points within Indonesia for logistics, right? So in order okay, let me give you an example first. The oranges coming from China is actually cheaper than oranges coming from Sumatra if you buy it in Jogja. Can you imagine? To me it was impossible, but it is true, right? So the oranges coming from China is cheaper if you buy in Jogja here than the oranges coming from Sumatra, which is within Indonesia. We know all the answer why, because the Chinese oranges came to us with a big container, big super container, and then they go through the ocean. While our oranges coming from Sumatra to the truck with the land route, but quite poor road that we have, and probably also poor trucks in this case. So the cost is higher for the transportation. You use the term logistic or supply chain. That is exactly what we realize now very well. So meaning that if we have already the space where we can transport all the goods within Indonesia why should we bother with the land road? Oh, certainly we have to build the land road, but we have a lot of ocean space for the transportation of the goods. That is the basic principles of the sea toll. We understand that in Indonesia. Now, what happens when it comes to the interaction between countries in ASEAN? To my understanding, China, for example, even though China is not part of ASEAN per se, but at least we always say ASEAN +1, ASEAN +3, ASEAN +2, has the Maritime Silk Road, the OBOR, One Belt, One Road, all of those kind of policy, actually to connect countries within Asia, even the world, for trade and for cultural exchanges. Honestly speaking, I don't know much about the initiative from ASEAN in order for ASEAN as an institution to connect those countries through the ocean. So we still need to wait for that. But probably, correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody knows better than I do.
My name's Lisa and I'm from Groningen. And my question is actually related to her question. Whether countries can lose existing claim or existing approved claims because islands are shrinking or disappearing because rising water levels or the sand is just being taken away. So yeah, whether they can lose their already approved claims and then the map has to be updated all the time.
Thank you, very good question. Basically, map should represent the reality. That is the basic principles. But when it comes to legal issue, the law, for example, in the law of the Sea Convention says that the coastline is something that appears on the official map recognized by such country. Meaning that in a legal perspective, reality is not a legal evidence or proof, but map is a legal proof. Which means if you map your country during an island appear, for example, the island will still be there officially until you revise your map. Okay? But the problem is the map is also used for navigation, safety. So if the map does not represent the reality, it means the map will not serve its intended purposes. So now there is a different kind of approach. When you think that your current map is good legally to make your position secure and in a better position in terms of ocean claim, you might not want to change it or update it. But the other issue is that because you are also asked to provide a most updated map for the safety of the navigation, and then the discussion is still there. The next question is whether or not you can lose ocean space when you lose island or land. The answer is yes. But if you talk about borders that is agreed by two countries, for example, like your country, my country, if we agreed already to the line, like one day, whatever happens to my land, it will not affect the agreed boundaries. So we have to make two differences here. The claim, unilateral claim, or agreed boundaries. Agreed boundaries will never change, but the claim can change.
Morning, sir. My name is Nabila from Gadjah Mada University.
Yeah.
So my question is, how is it the law for a country which is intentionally expand their land area, like for example Singapore? Will it also expand their sea territorial or will it decrease their sea territorial? Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is a very good question. I've been always waiting for this kind of question. The answer is, I think I follow up with, because it's quite similar to the previous question. Singapore and Indonesia already agreed maritime boundaries between them, okay? Since 1973, 2009, 2014. So the line between us is there, already settled. So meaning that because it is an agreed line, that will never change. So it doesn't matter what happens to you, Singapore, for example, if you expand your land, it will not change the line, okay? The analogy is like this. If you live in a settlement like a housing settlement, you have your own building, right? And you have your fence next door. If you enlarge your building, what happens to your fence? Nothing. So you cannot really shift your fence only because you enlarge your own building, because you're never really very angry to you, right? That is the analogy. Got it? Yeah.
Good morning, sir.
Yes.
My name is
Morning.
also the same with you. I made, but no
Oh.
PhD yet. Sorry. Hopefully soon.
There you go. See, I said it already, right? If you call me Imade, like he would have to also come here and teach, actually.
So I want to ask you a question about the change of name on South China Sea. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
on the north of our archipelago, which is the Natuna Island.
Yes.
The name of the sea around there is
Yeah.
becoming North Natuna Sea, if I'm not wrong.
Yes,
The,
yes.
the same one like Filipina do. They do change the name of the dispute water area in the west of their island. So they changed it into the West Filipina Sea. And then I want to ask you about this. How important is the change of the name on that area? And we know that we are still have another place or spot where we are in dispute with the other region.
Yes.
That's why don't we change it also if it's that so important for our country? Thank you.
First of all, we would like to remind you again that the naming of ocean space in the world, we have to refer to the documents called S23 of International Hydrographic Organization. So that is the only official naming convention that we have at the moment. And the latest one was updated in 1953. It was a very long time ago, yeah. So, officially, the name of the area over there is South China Sea. That's obvious. Second thing that I would like to remind everybody is that name does not represent ownership. Okay, a name does not represent ownership or sovereignty or sovereign rights. Meaning that just because there is the word China in the South China Sea, it does not. I mean, the name does not really tell us that it belongs to China. We also have, for example, in Indonesia, Lombok Strait. It does not belong solely to Lombok. We have Laut Jawa, Java Sea. Java Sea does not actually to tell you that it is actually owned by Java, right? So name does not represent ownership. That is something that we have to understand. Okay. First, the agreement is there. Second, name does not represent ownership. However, psychologically, it does represent something. Okay. If it doesn't represent anything, why would China, for example, bother to protest the renaming of that ocean, right? So psychologically, people would somehow gain the impression of ownership or at least control when they have the name of their country into a certain ocean space. Now, the question is that how important is it for Indonesia? Indonesia understands that legally it does not have anything to do with the legal status or international consensus of the naming of the space. However, psychologically, Indonesia would like to bring the attention of the world at least, or Indonesian at least, that, hey, we have the interest over there. We have the interest in those areas, and we are entitled to the space, and we have to do something about it. Indonesia wants to send a clear message to the world about this claim, and also to China in this case, and then to bring the case into a negotiating table probably if needed, and then for Indonesia and China and other countries to talk about it. The next point is that because Indonesia thinks that the S23 is very old already, and it does not anymore represent, or is no longer represent the reality in the world, we need to update it. And through this kind of action, unilateral action, I think Indonesia wanted to bring the attention of the world, hey, this is the time for us to update that S23. While in other place, once again, the issue is not that sensitive. I think Indonesia does not really see if you name whatever ocean space other than in the South China Sea will bring the same impact or the same attention from the world. I think that is how Indonesia considered its action.
My name is Fauki from Universitas Gadjah, Mada. In this slide, we know that there are many studies and ideas that the ocean in the ASEAN could be the next frontier for the economic growth of ASEAN. But in the other hand, there are many issues, especially like the plastic waste and pollutants in the ocean. And I'm curious about the ASEAN concern, and is there any consensus like regarding this kind of problem? Because ASEAN is like heading to a new emerging market, emerging economies that are focusing on the ocean, but in the other hand, there are still many problems like illegal fishing and then pollutants and plastic waste and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. I came from New York last month to speak at the United Nations General Assembly. One of the issue that was raised over there is ocean debris, plastic debris, whatever. So in the international level, global level, the concern is very high. However, so once again, I don't really honestly see yet from the Asian as an institution with regards to this issue. China, we know that it is the number one producer for plastics, and Indonesia is only number 2 or 3. So we are not really far behind. Not really proud of that, but yeah, that's the fact. So the Ministry of, the coordinating minister for Maritime Affairs, Kemenko Maritime, has already begun a number of steps. For example, we organize a conference to invite people from around the world to talk about maritime ocean debris or marine debris. So at least to build the consciousness, the awareness of people, we have done that. 2 ladies from Bali, by the name of Melati and Isabel, were also invited to the United Nations to talk about their small project, which is impactful, called Bye Bye Plastic Bags in Bali. So this kind of thing we already see quite a lot, not only in Indonesia but also in ASEAN and around the world, certainly, which I hope that it will be institutionalized somehow, at least by the invitation from the United Nations to them to speak at the United Nations General Assembly. I think this is a positive gesture from the world to recognize this kind of issue formally.
My name is Refki. I'm from Universitas Gadjah Mada. I have a question, sir, and it probably sounds ridiculous for you. What is so important about the sea, sir? Because what's there in the ocean? Like every country in the in South China Sea are having disputes over the territory. So what's so important there? Isn't it better to use the sea together for the good of the countries which are close to the South China Sea? Like for example, Indonesia, what is so important in Natuna? Why do we have to claim that Natuna is our territory? Because we have a lot of oceans, like for example in Gunung Kidul or Maluku. I mean, yes, what's so important? Like I read, correct me if I'm wrong, that Jokowi built military base in Natuna, right? So it probably very important. So what's so important about the ocean? But don't tell me fish, sir, because I know that already. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, because you don't want to hear fish, so we just go to the next question. No, I think that's a valid question. That's a valid question. I'm sure that there is a bigger constellation than what I understand now. Even like we talk about military. Well, we have theory. We have an idealization of the world, right? We always say that in an ideal world. Do you know why we say that? Because there is no ideal world. So, conflict, interest, all of those things, in my opinion, is never linear. We can never predict that. So I think that is why, in general, we really need to secure space, we really need to secure resources. For example, if I may tell you, North Pole. Why do people, because exactly what you said, we still have a lot of things in Gunung Kidul or in Bantul. Why do we need to just go there and do that? Probably because the answer is we never know. Because we never know what we can gain from there. In the west of Sumatra, if you remember the little red chunk over there, my question is that, hey, why do you need to expend like billions or billions of rupiah only to do a survey over there, only to be able to claim only 4,000 kilometers seabed? While, exactly as you said, we have like a million square kilometers that we haven't even utilized yet, right? So I think what we do now is actually to anticipate the future, which is unpredictable. I know you're not happy with this answer, but at least I can give you the answer that you probably cannot ask back.
So my name is Thomas from the University of Burgundy in France.
Yes.
So my question was about the Schengen area in Europe. So I was just asking if you think the Schengen area used in Europe could be a good thing for ASEAN, and yeah, what do you think about it? So thank you.
My personal opinion is it will be great. But now I think we already have quite a similar arrangement, because I don't need to apply for visa to go to Malaysia, right, within ASEAN, but it applies to ASEAN members only. It's not yet applicable to you, for example. We would like to, I mean, I'm not really sure, but I'm not an expert in that, but I think it will be fun, at least, for you guys to apply only for one single visa that will enable you to tour around ASEAN, right? So my opinion is positive about that.
I'm Aulia from Universitas Trisakti from Jakarta.
Right.
My question will be off the topic a little bit, but as we all know from the news, Indonesian Border Patrol blows up illegal fishing boats for illegal fishing, right? And I just want to ask for your opinion. Do you think the decision to blow up the illegal fishing boat is really necessary to do? Thank you.
Okay. Now I really need to stop this. We have been blowing ships who came to us and fished illegally for maybe 1 or 2 years now. Okay, and it was massive. I mean, the impact, at least the impact to the international community is big. I was in the same event with Ibu Susi, our dear minister, in New York, and she was praised positively by almost everybody, including Leonardo DiCaprio, which I think she was very happy about. So Leonardo DiCaprio gave a speech, even though it's only a video, literally mentioned the name of our minister because of her success in bringing this maritime ocean issue up, and also to protect the ocean resources, especially the fish. Necessary or not, I think in this kind of stage now, it provides a positive impact. But certainly it is not something that we really want to do like forever. So now, if you ask me now, in the very moment, it is a yes. Thank you, terima kasih, selamat pagi, good morning.